you brought your own timer.
Almost there for 15 minutes.
I like that story about the suspect. So that's really neat. It's my first night here at Intergroup at this meeting, and I'm really nervous. My name's Dawn. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Dawn.
And my home group is Sober Sisters of Seattle. There's a bunch of them here. We actually all came to support Linda. I didn't know I was going to be speaking. So, I'm just so grateful to be sober. My sobriety date is December 4th, 2011. That's not the first time I came into AA, though. I grew up in a family that drank. Everything we did centered around alcohol. It was normal. And we didn't really do things that didn't involve alcohol. There was wild parties, it could be, loud laughing that could, maybe turn bad into yelling. Sometimes it's a fine line. But my grandparents, they didn't lose homes, lose jobs, and ultimately try to kill themselves. And my mom also, like I do. And that's usually where alcohol takes me. It's like a cycle I go through from the time I started as a teenager drinking. I think I had my first drink around 11. And, that was it. After that, that's all I wanted to do was party. Didn't want to go to school, just couldn't get enough of it. That's all I wanted. And it was, like I said, a downward spiral. I would leave home, move out. And, by the time I bottom out, then my family would come in, pick me up, and clean me up. And then I get back out there again, and the whole pattern. And then those periods of the downward spiral were getting shorter and shorter. So by the time I was 27 years old, I had 2 kids, and I ended up with a DUI. So I was drinking every day. I wasn't drinking before work, but I was missing a lot of work. So I was calling in a lot, and that anxiety when I wasn't drinking, that churning, all of that. And the DUI took me into AA. And I forgot to set the timer.
It's right here.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, thanks. So that took me into AA. I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know I could be an alcoholic. And I learned all that, what an alcoholic is, and, not being able to control my drinking, not being able to stop drinking. I ended up getting a sponsor. This woman came up to me in the very beginning offering me her phone number, and I was like, oh no, I don't need that. I'm just here because of the courts. I'm not a part of this. And through time, and my life is just basically riding around drinking, because I was living at my grandparents at that time, trying to figure out, I was going through a divorce, a kid, and trying to figure out how I was going to fix all this. And that lady one day said to me, well, maybe it's not all these other things. Maybe it's your drinking. For me, when I focused on my alcoholism, the rest of it fell into place. And, that gave me so much hope. And it just sounded so much simpler than all that I had going on up there. And, I couldn't imagine at that age never partying again. But at that point, nobody was inviting me to any parties. They weren't inviting me anywhere. It wasn't going to be hard to get through the weekend. So, I learned so much from her, and from that, I got sober in Virginia. They would talk about spiritual experiences in the meetings a lot. My first sponsor, she told me about, just get down on your knees and ask God to remove your desire to drink. And I was hearing other people sharing about God removing their desire to drink. And I had no belief in God. I just thought it was a weakness for weak people. And somehow I associated dumb in there too. I don't know why. But so I can remember getting down on my knees in my room all by myself. And I just felt absolutely ridiculous. But I just said the words, and little by little, she described it as a mustard seed. It grew. My faith grew. One day I realized I wasn't fighting getting through the day to not drink. My life was getting so much better with these gals I hooked up with. And they were single moms too. And so that kind of helped out. And our kids were about the same age. And, they just like picked me up in this whirlwind. I was just telling them earlier tonight. I mean, we went camping with the kids. We just did so much stuff that, I would have never done any of that. And just all the joy in my life. And, the higher power. Oh my gosh, there were times where I can remember I ended up buying a home and, I just mowed the grass. I can remember just sitting out there on the steps and just overflowing with tears that this was my life. I never saw myself getting to anything like that. And I didn't have a desire to drink anymore. My kids were doing well, life was good. And then I started dropping off of the meetings. I let that service position go. I didn't pick up another one. My sponsor, I didn't really need her a whole lot now. Then I had the great idea. I think, that whole money, property, and prestige. I had always been a secretary and then, a mom. And, now I'm wanting, a little more. And money. So those character defects are jumping in there. And I became a nurse. And through that, I didn't have any time between going to school and working. I didn't have any time for AA. So, it went by the wayside. And then I found myself one day sitting with some people and, other students after class and at like TGI Fridays, something like that. And I decided on that particular day, I'm going to have a drink too. And I can remember the whole scenario in my brain. It said, oh, well, you're an alcoholic. Well, but that was, I went through a lot of troubled years, when I was a kid with, my mom and stuff. And now I've been through the steps and I'm a successful woman. And then finally, if this goes bad, I'll just go back to AA. So that all went through in about, 60 seconds. And I had a drink. And from that drink to 6 years later, I was homeless. I hadn't talked to my kids in like 9 months. I totally bottomed out. No home, no nothing, no job. I'm just riding around, drinking 24/7 alcohol and smoking crack and anything else. And, I set that beast off and it was so much worse than it had ever been. The disease for me was just so powerful and I just couldn't get that total surrender again. And I started going back to AA. I met Jill. She tried to help me quite a bit. And I met I met Larry, I think, and some others. And, I come in for a little bit and then I go right back out. At one point I remember, looking back 60 days, I've only drank 4 times. Improvement, that section in the foreword where it talks about that.
5%.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so but I kept trying, and then it was finally, I ended up in that stage of oblivion drinking. I even went to treatment. I paid to go to treatment. I inherited a bunch of money from my dad. I just couldn't get it. And that oblivion drinking, and I ended up wanting to kill myself again because that's where it always takes me. And through that, I was finally able to reach out to a friend and go to treatment. Get into treatment. It was a whole bunch of, God shots all through all of it. Bunch of AA members. Every time I have reached out to AA, somebody has been there. There's always, no matter how many times I've come and left, they welcome me back. Jill, like I said, she was there. Many others. My sponsor, she took me back. When I got out of treatment, I ended up going into a recovery program, but I knew right away I had to get back involved with AA. Well, the recovery program was also a homeless shelter since I didn't have anywhere to live. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I knew I needed to get back to AA too, because that's what had worked for me in the past, and I just knew it. And today I know that those other programs, they helped me so much and they were wonderful, but they have end dates. And I need something for life, ongoing. Women like Linda in my life and, so many others. Our home group, Sober Sisters, is so awesome. the joy I get, that feeling inside, alcohol, I can't feel any of that when I'm drinking. I am so cut off from God and everyone. My husband, so we got married this past November. So we had met him in AA, and I knew, AA, this is where my life has always been the best. And I wanted a husband who wanted AA too. And of course, good looking and all those other things. But I knew that. And I wanted to share this with the man I marry. And so it was just wonderful. And our wedding was so awesome because this fellowship, was there. It was God shots through it. The ladies were so wonderful. They put it on for us, and everything was just perfect. And the joy I felt that day, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I don't know. This is the best life I've ever had. And, I went from homelessness, and now 10 years later, I have the best. I couldn't figure out how I was going to get that life back I had, when I became a nurse and all that. When I first bottomed out this time, my life is already beyond what it was then. And, one thing I know today is I have problems maintaining the good life. So I need to be here following women like Linda and my sponsor and all the others around, and learning from them and from all of you and all the good friends. So I don't know. I think that's probably good, huh?
That's great.
Okay.